Hello, tonight we will be looking at the Renaissance. So, what is the Renaissance? I thought you would never ask. So the Renaissance is a time period in Europe that really begins in Italy, where people start to relearn the ways of classical Greece and Rome, and it really becomes this popular new fad or this popular new trend that everyone starts to do during this time period, really starting in the late 1300s into the 1400s. It's also a time literally called the Rebirth because it follows the Dark Ages, which, as you know, was a breakdown of learning for people all over Europe. So as I said, the Renaissance began in Italy. Specifically, it began in the city of Florence, right here in the center of Italy. Other places where it would spread to are obviously Rome, Venice, which is in this area, Milan, and then also down into Naples. Notice that most of these have access to the sea, so there's a lot of trade coming in. When you look at Florence and Milan, you have different industries that propped it up, such as banking and trading into Central Europe. Okay, so why Italy first? Well, if you recall, in the Dark Ages, further north in Europe, you have countries like England and France who were fighting the 100 Years' War. You have people invading from the north like the Vikings and then the Magyars from Eastern Europe. But really, Italy gets over this faster. It seems like they go through these periods earlier, including the Black Death. So as they're recovering, you see that they are focusing more on making money and producing literature and art and culture, and that's more profitable and more fulfilling than fighting. What did the Renaissance look like? How would you know that you were in the Renaissance if you were dropped off in a time machine? Basically, you're looking at a couple of things. The first thing that we're looking at here is that you have new art and new literature and new paintings, but a majority of this new style, in quotes, is really the old style that is coming back into fashion. And by old style, I mean classical Greek and Roman elements. Now, artists are embracing this old style, but they're using new talents that we will talk about in a few minutes to show that they've mastered the old style and that they're fashionable, but also that they are pushing the boundaries to create new types of art, to really show off their talent. And one example of the old style is how people are posed, not only in sculpture but also in paintings. And this is literally how someone is standing. And notice they're not standing straight up. They're standing in what's called a contrapposto, or this is more like an S curve, where people are almost slouched over to the side a bit. So again, this was really popular about 1,000 years earlier, and now it's coming back into fashion once again. So when we talk about these new talents that these artists in the Renaissance have, the big thing that they're trying to show off is that they can paint things with depth. And basically this is just adding what's called perspective, 3 dimensions. And they're using geometry, they're using light and dark and space to create more depth in their paintings, because they want to show that they can paint more 3-dimensionally than the artists who came before them. Okay? As an example, for video gamers out there, imagine the original Nintendo and Super Mario Brothers and how 2-dimensional that looked. And then now look at the games today where you can run directly at the screen and it looks a lot more 3-dimensional. It's the exact same thing with the Renaissance. In addition to that, artists are now trying to show that they are talented in painting exactly how something looks. They're more realistic. And to do this, they are studying the human body so that when they make a sculpture or when they make a statue or even when they paint something, they want it to look more realistic than just a perfect form. Okay? So when you look at this, people are actually painted like they actually looked, and human bodies look like human bodies, not like some perfect form. Okay, so what I want you to do right here is I want you to look in this painting, this by Botticelli, it's called The Adoration of the Magi, and I want you to look for Renaissance elements. I'm not going to tell you them, so when we get to class tomorrow, I want you to be able to point these out when I show this on the big screen. This is among the most famous Renaissance paintings, and this is by Leonardo da Vinci, and it's called The Last Supper. Again, look for elements that really tell you that this is a Renaissance piece of art. This is another work by another artist called Raphael, and this is called The School of Athens. To give you a little hint into why this is Renaissance, the people that you see are actual painters and artists of the Renaissance period. However, they are meant to look like classical Roman and Greek philosophers like Aristotle and Socrates and Plato. Okay? But beyond that, look at the styles. How could you tell someone without a doubt that this is from the Renaissance? And one last thing, the people that you see, they're life-sized in the painting. So this painting is huge. And now to the most famous painting in the world. This is Leonardo da Vinci's painting called the Mona Lisa. And this is hanging in Paris, France at the Louvre Museum. And 6 million people go visit this museum just to see this painting every year. I want you to look at this very carefully and ask yourself, one, why is this a Renaissance painting? And two, why is this the most famous painting in the world? Now, the Renaissance isn't just a time of painting, it's also a time of architecture and literature development as well. So if we look at this in terms of architecture, we're looking at architects using classical Roman and Greek designs, okay? So obviously these would be things like using columns again, using arches again, using domes again. It's just sort of what you call a neo-Roman or a neo-Greek style. Neo means new. So they're trying to rebuild this classical style once again. Just like in painting, not only are these architects using the old style, but they're also bringing in new styles as well to show you that they've understood the past style, but also to show you that they have talent to move forward and move really past that, okay? And you can see this, just like you saw in painting, you can see it in symmetry, in geometry, in depth, in proportion, really in a way that the classical architects of Rome and Greece couldn't. So just like we did with the paintings, I want you to look inside this church in Florence. This is called the Church of San Lorenzo by the architect Brunelleschi. And tell me exactly how you know that this is a Renaissance designed church. Okay, we're still in Florence. And this is a basilica called the Basilica of Santa Maria Novella by the architect Alberti. Just looking at the facade, the outside, how do you know exactly that this comes from the period called the Renaissance? Okay, this is the last slide, and basically this is just to sum up what you learned, okay? Instead of me telling you what you learned, I want you to write down what were the main ideas of the Renaissance. How did you know you were looking at a Renaissance painting or that you were looking at a Renaissance building, okay? What did both paintings and buildings of the Renaissance have in common? We'll talk about this more tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.